at a technology forum for? I'm the face, not the brain, okay? He said, don't worry about it. I would like you to speak about your career.
Not one thing, like to get you queued up.
I would like you to speak about your career. I would like you to tell us how you went from being a kid on Long Island to a tech entrepreneur. So I wrote that speech. And then Carol said, why are you talking on your career? You should be talking to entrepreneurs about the pitfalls that you've had in your careers, your high and lows. I said, okay, so then I wrote that speech. And then I got here and they said, no, we want you to talk on your career. So if I bore you to death, it's not my fault. Blame Corey. Okay. So as I said, I grew up on Long Island. This is me with the brown hair, my older sister Karen, in front of our fabulous car on Long Island at our house my mom still lives in. My mom is here today. The worst thing that happened to me as a kid was my brother left home when I was 10 or 11, and he went to West Point. My father was a colonel, and that's me, and that's my brother. I thought I would never be able to get over that. But then I started modeling. And modeling is way worse than anything you could ever think of in terms of somebody leaving. So this was my first modeling pose. That's me. My sister made the gauchos, and I must have used that pose in modeling or on red carpets maybe 1,000 times. So I was waitressing at a restaurant, and a guy came in and said, you know, you should be a model. Thank goodness my boyfriend broke up with me, because otherwise I probably never would have left Long Island. I left Long Island because I didn't want to be here when he came back from school. I didn't want to be that scorned girlfriend. So I took the guy's number, I went into the city, and I met with agencies. My father was a fireman, and as well as a colonel in the Army Reserve, and I was in the Army ROTC. And I was paying for that, and I was vying for a scholarship. And what I did was, I modeled so that I would be able to pay for my education if I didn't get the scholarship. But when John Casablancas came to me and said, with this cover, if I can't let you make enough money to buy the college, I will send you to college. And I thought, well, that's a little better than running 10K with bricks on my back. Many people said to me, what was a big wow moment in your career? It was not this. I know you think it might be or it should be, but it wasn't. It was this. This was my wow moment. This was my very first cover. And why it was a wow moment was because it pointed me in the direction to go. It said, you can do this. There was 100 girls on this trip, and I got the cover. And that said to me, you're good enough to be on the cover. You're good enough to run with these women. You're good enough to be in the pack. Sports Illustrated didn't do that. That came 2 years later. This was the one that told me I was good enough. My career was a wall of bricks. It was little bricks all along the way that helped me build a career. It wasn't any one big wow. It wasn't Sports Illustrated. It was Sports Illustrated and a bunch of other things, CoverGirl and Lacombe and all the people who supported me and hired me. Life magazine called me the next $1 million face. I was like, seriously? Does this look like the next $1 million face to you? They shot these photos of my sisters and I, and that's my mom and my sisters and I, at our house on Long Island. And this actually wasn't from Life magazine, but I wanted to get my mom and dad in there. And, you know, that was a lot to live up to. Because in 1979, when I started modeling, okay, now you're calculating, I'm 58. In 1979, when I started, $1 million was $1 million. It wasn't like today where $1 million you can't even buy a house. But it was a lot of money back then. So to call the next $1 million face only let me know that I was headed in the right direction. I always had a plan B. My plan B was if this didn't work, I was going to go back to school, study law, become the first female JAG with my scholarship through ROTC. And that's what I had planned on doing. But as this rolled along and things started happening, I thought, okay, I can do this. My father once said to me, Carol, put every penny you have in the bank because modeling only lasts 4 years, and then it's over. And I thought, you know, after my 4 years was up, I was desperate. I thought, I want this to continue. How? How do I get this to continue? And I saw a hole in the market. I saw something that nobody else was doing. Posters and calendars. These are two of my posters. I went to John Casablancas and I said, John, I have a great idea. Oh, this is the best idea ever. And everybody will make money. And he said, what is it? I said, I want to do posters. And he looked at me and he said, no way. And he stood up and walked out on me. And I learned in that moment that no matter how enthusiastic you are about an idea, no matter how much you really believe in something, other people might just not get it. But there's always a way. If you're passionate enough about something, there's always a way to go about getting there. So I hired a manager back in 1983, never heard of in the modeling industry, and I had him produce these posters with me. I hope anybody here is old enough to remember the Boz. The Boz was doing, yeah, all right. So I hired the Boz's manager at ProTech Management, and we did a series of posters which became so successful that literally every girl in the agency had a poster. So now that was boring to me. If everybody's doing something, it's not unique, it's not exciting, it's not different. So I went and I did exercise videos, and I reached out and did a collaboration with Cosmo Magazine to do exercise videos. And then, of course, Cindy Crawford did hers, and everybody was doing theirs, and I thought, well, that's really boring. So I went on to calendars. So I sold the idea of calendars to my agency because I thought, okay, I want to keep this going. I have to keep this going. I have to keep thinking of new things. Being first doing something was what was really exciting to me. I was born December 1st. I was supposed to be born December 2nd. I came the 1st because I wanted to be first. So I wanted to be first with calendars. I sold the idea to Elite, and one day I called them up and said, what's happening with my calendars? What's happening with my calendars? And they said, oh, you're going to be in the Elite calendar. I said, what? I wasn't talking about an Elite calendar. They said, oh no, the single calendar, we sold that with Paulina. I got to be the first. Called up the manager. I said, I have to get my calendar out first. I beat her by 2 weeks, but I've gone on to do about 10 calendars. So it became another business. But all this came out of the fact that all I wanted to do was to keep doing what I was doing. I wanted to be there with the big boys, and I wanted to keep going. But when you start doing a lot of bridal magazine covers, in the industry, that's kind of the death knell. So I started creating tributaries of things to do so that I could stay in that business. All the while, I was studying. I was getting up at 6 in the morning, I was going to my classes, I was studying things that had to do with modeling and acting and being in front of the camera because, hey, I know my father was right. It's a 4-year gig. I've stretched it out to maybe 8, but, it just starts winding down. At a certain point, they start looking for a new, young, fresh face. So I was studying and always had my plan B. If I wasn't going to be a JAG, I needed to be good in front of the camera. I needed to know how to act. So I went on into movies. I worked with Bob Fosse, gave up a lot of money because I believed I could really learn something from Bob Fosse in theater. And what I learned was, I can't act. I couldn't act at all. And he fired me. Not at the end of the run, but he didn't take me to Broadway. I didn't look like a tall Swedish girl. And so I realized I needed help. Can't do this by yourself. There's always a trick to everything. And I wanted to know what that trick was. So I hired coaches. I got hired for my first movie, which was this one with Renee Simonson. I don't know if you guys remembered her. She was all over the face of Vogue back in the 80s. And it became a huge hit. But the first 2 days on it, I was like, oh, this is horrible. I can't believe I have 2 weeks on this. The director was behind the camera going, this is terrible. I can't believe I have her for 2 weeks, But by the end of the deal, he was already offering me my next film because I worked hard. I knew that I didn't know everything. I wasn't difficult to work with. I was humble about it. And I hired a coach to work with me so that I was always constantly protected, that I had a net so I wouldn't fall. And my people didn't let me down. They didn't let me fall. So then what happened was I'm working, 18, 20 hours a day, 6 days a week. You're exhausted. I'm in every scene. I'm usually the female lead, and the female lead with my male counterpart being second. So that means you're literally carrying the movies. And I got sick. And my health started to suffer. And one day I was on a trip with supermodels, Carol Holton Supermodels in the Rainforest, and I just realized I couldn't do this anymore. And I started praying, and the answer to my prayer was that, raw. And that saved my life. And because that saved my life, and I made a promise to the big guy upstairs that I would pay it forward, I listened and waited for the opportunity to do what I had promised. I wanted to deliver on my promise and pay it forward. And that led to a whole separate career in health and nutrition. That's my sister coughing to let me know it's 10 minutes. Thank you, Chris.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
Well, it's good to know. If I bore them, they'll walk out on me. So that led to a whole separate career because I listened to my gut, and my gut said, you made a promise that you can't not keep. So I wrote my books, and then one day I was sitting with Roger Ailes at lunch. He was a friend of mine for many years, and God bless his soul. And I said, he looked at me and he said, well, you've done this, you've done that, you've done your stunts, you've done movies, you've done that. What's there left to do? And I thought, it's now or never. And I took the risk, and I looked him straight in the face, and I said, I've never worked for you. And he said, his eyes got big, he said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, but I'm sure we could figure out something. I've got 5 best-selling books. What do you think? So he created A Healthy You. This book came off of the show. It's actually a compilation of all the doctor's information that had come on my show, which was an alternative health show. And that's why I got the show, because I dove in. I figured, what have I got to lose? All I could do is say no, right? So this was my show. We had Virginia Madsen and Suzanne Summers and Russell Simmons. We had a lot of great people who were all doing alternative health stuff. My whole idea was, Raw saved my life. If I could just save one life like my life was saved. Then I got injured really badly, an elbow in my back. I almost died. My family was there for me. And it always brings me to tears. I literally didn't get out of bed for 6 months. And it took me about 3 years to be able to stand up again because I took an elbow in the back during a massage. Something so simple, so stupid, so silly, something you probably do every day. I got an elbow in the back. And she cracked my rib, ripped all the prima fascia, and my ribs moved around the front of my body and attacked my organs. And I didn't know this was happening because I was being diagnosed with pneumonia, the superbug, and bronchitis. And as I was laying in bed and not able to do anything, I thought, what have I done to pay it forward? What have I done to help somebody else? This has been such a great career. If I die today, what have I done to help somebody else? So I reached out and I called a girl named Deb Perkins, who's also here today, at Kat Perkins, and I said, what can I do to help? And she said, I can't believe this is Carol Alt. And I was like, it's Carol Alt, what can I do to help? I love your idea, this is an amazing idea, this is the most fantastic shoe I've ever seen, let me help. Didn't want anything. And we started a collaboration on Kat Perkins shoes. And from that, I just went, you know what? It works when you dive in. It works when you're selfless. It works when you're not greedy, because greed begets greed. And when I've done something good, it's come back tenfold. And I've always made sure that whatever I was doing, I was helping other people. And that gave me power. I was fearless because my intentions were good. And then I started reaching out to other people. So I reached out to Miracle in a Night. And I said, I love your product. It's right along with all my raw, chemical-free stuff. So we started a collaboration. Core 46, again, it goes along with my moral obligation to other people to do things that are healthy and clean and good for the body and actually work. Dr. Diness has raw oils in her skincare line. Again, I hosted her infomercial. I did all this in the last year. So I came off of a deadly injury that almost killed me to come back and say, you know what, Deb, I'd like to help you with your shoe. And then I just constantly kept rolling. There's the Kat Perkins shoe. As you see, you can change the top. It's interchangeable. I gave Deb photos. I said, just take them, do what you want with them. My management went crazy, I have to tell you. They're like, you lose the leverage if you call up. I said, it's not about me. It's about something bigger. And then things just started happening. I started doing a show on the FNL network, which is on Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is trying to compete with Netflix, so I did a show. So just things like, when you just put yourself out there and you just open yourself up and you just say, okay, what can I do good for other people? And things just come right back to you, and that's how I've done the whole thing. I did this for my ex-boyfriend, not my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend. I said, what would a hockey player like best? To own a team. So we did a deal with the Vegas Golden Knights. We're being vetted right now so he can own a piece of the team. And then how I got here today with you guys was through Just Rivals. When we pitched to Mark and I showed him what it could do for Drake and for 21 Days, which is his Beyonce and Jay-Z program, he said, do you think you could speak at our event? I said, I can't speak, but Craig can talk about it. So the next speaker up is my partner Craig for Just Rivals. And that's how I got here with you guys today. It was not a straight road. There was lots of ill health and injuries, but you believe in God, you do the right thing, you can always bounce back. And, of course, good family and friends. Thank you.
So for all that earnestness, she misled you about one thing. Yes, she can speak. Right?